So today's topic is financial abuse and mental health in view of domestic abuse. 1 in 5 women and one in 7 men has suffered some form of financial abuse, typically at the hands of their partner. Like all domestic abuse, it is a hidden crisis that goes on behind closed doors. And lockdown, however, essential for public health, will have made matters worse for many victims. It is vital that everyone involved in financial services do whatever they can to shine a light on this harm. Financial abuse is a form of economic abuse, reported to be present in 99% of domestic abuse. Control of finances can form part of a pattern of coercive control. Coercive control is a continuing act or a pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation, and intimidation or other abuse that is used to harm, punish, or frighten the victim. There are no completely reliable figures for the extent of financial abuse, as it operates under the radar, and research has found that victims are unlikely to report it, partly because they may not recognize it as abuse, but partly for reasons of shame and cultural norms. But a survey by Opinium for the Co-op and Refuge in 2015 found that as many as 1 in 5 women had experienced financial abuse at some point in their lives. Financial abuse involves controlling a victim's ability to acquire, use, and maintain financial resources. Those who are victimized financially may be prevented from working. They also may have their own money restricted or stolen by the abuser. Without resources of their own, victims are often unable to care for themselves, find employment and housing, or save for the future. It can leave the abused partner with usually women, with no money for basic essentials, such as food and clothing. Those who manage to leave their abusers can find themselves debt-ridden, lacking necessary job skills, and even at risk for homelessness. The charity Surviving Economic Abuse explains financial abuse as harming the victim's well-being in 3 main areas. These are: number 1, acquiring economic resources, preventing someone from being in education, limiting work hours, taking someone's pay, refusing to let them access benefits, stopping access to a bank account or financial products. Number 2, use of economic resources. This is controlling where money is spent and how purchasing decisions are made, making victims account for all their expenditure and explaining purchases, controlling use of any resource with economic value, such as property, cars, and mobile phones. And number 3, maintaining abuse of resources. This is stealing money, causing damage to property that incurs further costs to victim survivor, misusing money in joint products such as extending lines of credit, transferring shared money from a joint bank account, insisting bills or credit in victim's name, and coerced debt through placing liabilities in the victim's name, which leads to the impacts on their credit files and economic stability. A number of studies have demonstrated a link between financial abuse and mental health problems, such as depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. Financial problems adversely impact your mental health, as well as the psychological, emotional, and physical abuse faced by the abused. Now, if we go to the slide, I don't know if you can see this on the screen. At the top left-hand corner in the purple semicircle, it says 95% of women who experience domestic abuse also report experiencing economic abuse. And just below that, in the black circle on the left-hand side, it says, every day in the UK alone, 30 women attempt suicide as a result of abuse. Women can feel so trapped and be rendered so powerless by the machinations and manipulations of the abuser that they feel the only way out is to end their life. And in the middle there, in the blue circle, it says, exposing financial abuse. Ask any parent who's a victim of financial abuse what their greatest heartache has been, and many will tell you it's not being able to provide for their children. This is taken from Shannon Thomas. And then on that screen, at the bottom right-hand corner, these are red flags of financial abuse. So red flags of financial abuse, and these are making financial decisions without consulting their partner. Overuse of credit cards and refuse to pay bills. Force their partner to file fraudulent tax claims or documents. Prevent their partner from owning or using credit cards. Harass their partner at work. Report that their partner cheats on public benefits, so these benefits are cut. Force their partner to sign over assets and power of attorney. So as the picture at the top right-hand corner shows, is writing on the back of a lady, and it says, love shouldn't hurt. And what we should take from this is that love should be something to treasure and cherish, and not to be avoided and afraid of. So moving on, I'll give it back to Cicely, and thank you everyone for listening.
And thank you so much, Tompe, for such a beautiful introduction to the conversation this morning. I know we did, introduce it last week, and what was very clear is that there is good link, almost very direct link between mental health and domestic abuse. And what we concluded is that the moment you start doubting or questioning whether this is domestic abuse, it clearly is. And so need to talk about it or to seek help where it is needed. We also know that there are quite a number of support services around us. And so it's important we empower ourselves by knowing where they are so that we can access support early enough. Okay, so there is a short video clip for us to watch because this is supposed to be a conversation. I hope that we can all have an input into it. And so before we do the pause and watch the short video clip, I will welcome Nisa. We have missed her for a while, and I know she is into new initiatives. So Nisa, if you can say hello to us and tell us what is out there that we can engage in with.
Hi. Oh, wow. What a surprise, Cecily. Thank you so much. I'm hoping to be here actually, just not to talk about work, but thank you for the opportunity. I am currently working for the University of Reading. I think some of you probably have heard me talking in the International Men's Day about the research project that I am currently involved in. And I'm really, really, really hoping that all of you would love to join me in this research project. It's about quality of life and how the built environment, which is the buildings and our neighborhoods in Reading, is impacting the quality of our lives in Reading as the Reading residents. And the way for you to be able to participate, please just send me an email or give me a call. I will put my details in the chat. You can either have an event that you want to showcase or a project you want to share with us. We will have a physical space in Broad Street Mall in March, and we'd like to invite you to go and visit us there. But if you have anything that you want to be included, any program, anything, an hour talk or a discussion, or even like something like this, to showcase a cause that matters to you, please do get in touch, and we would love to have you in our physical space in our exhibition in Broad Street Mall. I think I'm not going to say too much about this. And also, now that we're talking about financial abuse, this is something that is very, very impactful in our communities, especially in women, as the numbers, statistics show. Probably this is something that we can talk about in Broad Street Mall space that our research is going to have. So let me know. But thank you for the time, and it's good to be here again. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nisa, because we can't miss the opportunity of getting to know what is happening out there. The forum is meant for exactly that, empowering ourselves with what is going on within our communities. Yeah. So we don't have Sahib with us this morning, and I can't see Charles here yet. So I will attempt to share the poll. If I can't, I will read it out because it will help us engage with the conversation that we are about to embark on. So bear in mind what Tombe has brought out there, those pointers, and let's see what comes up in the polls. Just bear with me. Okay. Right, I don't think I'll have any luck with this. I'm getting a different poll from what is expected. So what I'll do is I'll read through the two questions that we have for the polls and try to put in the chat what your thoughts are. And from there we have a conversation. So the two questions are, so the first one is, how much do you think financial abuse in the view of domestic abuse impacts on our mental health or impacts on mental health? The first choice is a lot. The other one is not much. And the last one is not sure. You can either put in the chat or if you are ready and happy to, just put your hand up and share your thoughts on that.
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
The question is, how much do you think financial abuse in the view of domestic abuse impacts on mental health? The first answer is a lot, or the first choice is a lot. The second, not much. And the last one is not sure. I can see a few a lots there coming through. A lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, a lot. Okay. So far, I can't see any other choice other than a lot. So that means we are all in agreement that financial abuse has huge impact on mental health. And that this aligns with what we concluded last week, that domestic abuse has a direct link with mental health. But can anyone please expound on that? Let's hear why you have gone for a lot, or why you think we are all going for a lot.
Yes.
No pressure. Anybody please come in?
Because it affects your whole life.
Oh,
Everything is dependent on the finance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I just want to agree with what Goldipa said. I did select a lot, and this is because money matters in anyone's life. You need finances for your clothing, your food, your accommodation, and so money plays a major role in an individual's life. And so when that part of your life is abused, it will not contribute to good mental health, but instead it will affect you and me a lot negatively on our mental health, because somebody is really just touching around what you're able to do. Somebody is just kind of taking away your independence, where you are able to make decisions and do things and live the life that you want to live, and you are kind of rendered to be dependable on others. That will have a great, great impact negatively on our mental health.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Very
Can
Yes,
I make an observation as well in terms of the impact as well? When we talk about finances, we talk about being an adult. So from the time you're a teenager, you're taught about finances, and then as you start to earn money, you start to be responsible for your finances. Now, for somebody to take away that is to take away your perception of being an adult, that you can make sensible, rational decisions. And when the choice is not yours to take away that part of you, it not only affects you emotionally, it affects you mentally, it affects your self-esteem. So there's the wider picture of somebody deliberately taking that part of being an adult away from you.
fantastic. Precisely. Very well explained there. You know, that part of you taken away, it will make you really, your thinking changes, and the way you operate completely, you know, it goes out of the, you know, through the roof. Samaki guys,
there's a hand up, Cecily.
Sorry?
There's a hand up, Sam King or Sam Kenny or whatever. There's a hand up.
Yeah, that is Grace, I believe.
Yes, that's Grace. Yeah. It's
Okay.
pronounced Samkange.
Oh,
Sam Kange, okay.
Yes, yeah, from Zimbabwe. So
Zimbabwe, welcome.
thank you. I'm in UK at the moment. So I think with everything that has been said in terms of self-esteem and things like that, so you lose trust even within the family. And I would also want to add that it's not just the adults that end up with mental health or issues from financial abuse, even the children that are in the home, because if you are giving them some allowance, so they are going to miss out on their allowances. And also maybe if they get a gift of money, maybe from their grandmother or for their birthday, and maybe the parent takes that money away from them, doesn't let them use their money as they wish, that's also abusing the child, and they can end up with mental health issues and loss of trust.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Thank
these
you
are
so
all
much for that.
these are all very wonderful contribution based on what we are about to do today. And I think issues around finances can be extremely important in any family, and it's normally one of the strongest backbone in any family, particularly when we find ourselves in a different country. You know, we need to have that self-independence, and when you have to depend on somebody for that can be quite disabling status to be in, and that can also impact on your self-esteem as well as a person. And in terms of what my sister just said, and also what Dale was talking about in terms of the impact mentally, socially, and culturally even, and you can imagine how all of those things can limit you, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, as we progress, really, it's good for me to just share something with you guys that I've been working on. Somebody's background is noisy. Can we minimize that, please? I've been looking at how we, perhaps when we immigrate to a different society or country, how things can be. And I look at triangulating it, or, you know, having it from a triangular perspective. So I look at how we socialize away from our original country, and also how we look at the painful aspect of immigrating, being a foreigner or being somebody from another country, living in another country, which is a host country, like we are all in the United Kingdom. And also looking at how we culture it, how do we integrate into the new society? So if you were to come here with your partner and that element is not achieved, you're not socializing around the economy equally, you don't have any job, there's nothing to do, and the dependency on the husband is really greater. And for you and everything you want to do, you need to check on your husband. And if there's any abuse around finances, that can be quite hurtful as well. So that could really go a long way in actually damaging you mentally. And also the whole family will be at disarray. And I mean, there will be a huge problem within the family as well, that connectivity will be lost. And then you begin to look at the whole status you are in, a new country, no job, nothing at all. How do you connect? And that also can be quite an issue around isolation. You begin to isolate yourself. You don't reach out because you don't want people to know what is going on, you know, and you cut off from people because there's nothing to show to colleagues, you know, and you go on some platform, you're not able to share at all, you know, photos to show yourself in terms of how you're presenting yourself. That could be quite minimal as well. Even food intake, diet become a bit problematic. You either live on, you know, comfort food, and that can also increase your weight, or you either starve and that can also reduce your weight, and depression can kick in, low mood, and stress can also kick in, worry can also be a problem, and diabetes and all those other physical health problems we've been talking about. And when you are actually inculturating, there's a language barrier also, because all of these things that we talk about, finances to transact, you need a language to transact, you need the money to transact, and all of those, they all come together. So if there's any exploitation in one area, is going to have an impact on you seriously. So as we go along today, let's really focus on how do we manage, how do we talk about these things, how do we make these things known so that you can have support. But how do you really understand it, that it's actually taking place? Because sometimes we hold on to relationship because of so many other factors, which I may bring along again as we go on, because we need to look at why people keep in relationship that not working, but they are still there. So we bring that as we go along. So let's proceed with the conversation. But thank you so far for all those wonderful contributions and suggestions and inputs.
Yeah, so we are still on the first question on the poll, and that is very useful contribution there, very well analyzed. And I also like what Grace mentioned, the impact on the children. So if we had the time, we would have watched a 9 minutes video clip on a son talking about how domestic abuse between his parents impacted on him. And so giving very useful ideas or thoughts on how things can change in order to avoid, you know, the mental health that comes with that, but also the impact on the children when it comes to how they interact with others in school, but also in the communities. But let's hear the last view on that first question, how financial abuse impacts on mental health in view of domestic abuse. And then we will continue. Any other comments or contribution from that first question? If not, let me go to the second one. And I think James has alluded to that a bit. But let us think about how culture, or rather, let me read the question as it is. How much do you think culture gets in the way of addressing financial abuse in view of domestic violence or domestic? So how much do you think culture gets in the way of addressing financial abuse in an environment of domestic violence? Yes, Dwayne? Darwin Thomas, yeah, over to you. Yeah.
Hi, right. Well, I'm from Sierra Leone in West Africa, and culture does play a huge part in how domestic abuse is addressed. I come from a very, what you would term, a very patriarchal society, culture where violence is unfortunately seen as a way of resolving issues. So whether you're talking about violence against children in schools or violence against spouses. And again, just to be clear, it is not just women, men against women, but sometimes women against men. But I think today it's more about women, men against women. So
no, it's both. It's both.
It is both.
It's both. Yes.
So culturally, we grow up seeing violence as a way to resolve disputes. Within my country, there is no specific law, or if there is, it is not rigorously enforced. And there are certain people who would say that that is how they were brought up, that is what they know, and that is what they will perpetuate. They see no reason for doing it any differently. I mean, you have conversations with young African men, even as teenagers, they would not have a problem hitting their girlfriend because that is a cultural thing. Now, is it because they see it in the home? Is it because culturally that's how they have raised? So culture, and we always seem to think that because it's cultural and traditional, we shouldn't change it. But culture does play a huge part in certain countries, and I will take Sierra Leone as an example, where violence is seen as acceptable. And the funny thing is, we do not see it as violence. We see it as continuing what we have been brought up with. So I would guess in our minds, we differentiate the two. Violence is against a stranger, but within our family, we are, and I'm desperately trying to think of the term we use, we are teaching them how to be X, Y, and Z. And I think culturally, and until we can address that cultural issue, it will always be something we would have to live with.
Yeah, very well said there. And actually, yeah, and in light of financial abuse, culturally, as you mentioned there, finances are seen to be learned by men. Yeah, and we know how much problems it has caused in this country.
I'm in a Zoom meeting.
Because we find that women will take the backseat when it comes to issues of money for the.
Cecily, can you ask people to mute themselves?
Please do mute yourselves, so that we continue with a bit of ease. Okay. So yeah,
can
so
I just
finances.
quickly
Think about how we address issues of finances in the family setting and how much that contributes to violence and the impact that has on us with regards to mental health, but also on our children. Let's hear your comments.
Just make a quick observation? If you're talking about financial impact, again, it's something I just thought about. Yeah. And again, I would use my country, Sierra Leone, as a prime example, because that's what I know. The average Sierra Leonean man does not want his wife to work. And if they want your wife to work, they have to depend on you financially. So if you take that as the starting point, for you to then progress to depriving them of finances as a way of punishing them is not a huge leap. So again, that financial issue goes back to culture. That violence goes back to culture, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cecily, if I may just come in there, I mean, in terms of responding to all what people are saying in terms of how culture can perhaps interfere with our socialization and also in terms of earning money and all of those things, it's perfectly understandable. But there are a lot of disparities even in a single country. I really don't want to agree with the fact that culture can actually predicate violence against anybody, because culture really does not really allow all of those things. That's the reason why there are rules and regulations in any culture, even at grassroots level. In fact, if you go to villages, their connectivity there is completely twined around law, tradition, rule, what is to be done, what we can adhere to. I grew up in an African village, and there were a lot of boundaries. This is the role of the woman, this is the role of the man, and all of those things. They were systematically structured. So these are social constructs we are talking about. So they do not really allow the man to abuse the wife or vice versa. There are a lot of other developmental issues that we need to look at. But when we move away from our traditional society or setting, because in an African setting, the man goes to farm, the wife perhaps with welfare and all of this, they were managed structurally, you know, and there were a lot of cohesion here and there. I'm not minimizing the fact that we don't have any violence within that structure, because every situation, there must be some conflict here and there. But these are conflicts that were either traditionally handled or managed to a point where people become maybe a little bit aware of their roles, you know. But when we move away from those cultural settings, things become a bit different. For example, when you socialize away from your original country and you want to own an account, and that means you have to develop an independence. So that's where perhaps some of these issues can begin to surface. And also having the spending power is also important. Even in an African context, people have spending power. You know, women do as much as men do. And the concept of affection, how do we show love in an African context, might change depending on the level of your education and how it happened. So when we're here, how do you show your partner love? How do you hug them? What do you show them? What are the languages of love? Are you using them? So those are the issues that sometimes we need to look at here. And also there's a whole lot of issues to do with how did I come to this country? If you were the one that was brought by your spouse, maybe the husband or the wife, you know, what is the gratitude there? You know, who arranged your visa? Who brought you? Who paid for you? So these are some of the attachments we need to be talking about. You know, he brought me, so he's going to exploit me? No. Or I brought him, so will I be exploiting him because I brought him in this country? So these are some of the issues that we really need to look at. And I've been looking at studying all of this context within the African system. And these are some of the things. You are afraid of deportation. It's shameful consequences to go back to Africa and to be told, why are you here? I was deported because of violence against my wife, or my wife reported me to the police. So women tend to protect the husband or spouses because of some of these things, you know. And it's really quite an important issue for us to be aware of, that we get attached to some of these things and we get hooked onto this unhelpful relationship because of some of these factors, you know, because we don't want to be the one bookletting or telling stories about the husband and telling people the stigma. If you were to tell your colleague that my husband is exploiting me or abusing me, it becomes like a stigma. They talk about you. So these are some of the issues us here we need to understand and break that barrier. So I just want to bring that in as we go along, Cicely.
And very important, really, to mention that, James, we need to be aware of all those dynamics, because, you know, the changing roles as we've known them from an African setting have changed. And in most cases, those have caused a lot of problems. And unless we educate ourselves and bring that our awareness in the way we do things, there is always going to be issues within families. And of course, you know, when families are affected, communities are affected too. And it just reminds me of the conversation last Thursday, where, you know, one of us gave the example of the wife being back in their home country, and him being here, for the wife to spend the money, she is having to, or rather wherever she's going to spend it, some people are having to get in touch with him to check that that is right. And he could not understand why that was the case. But what he was saying was that, or he was trying to evidence the fact that the cultures, I mean, how much cultures get in the way of the progress that we need to have within ourselves, but also within the communities. So it is just something to be aware of. One more comment, and then we watch a short video clip here, and then we can react to it. Okay, let's play the video clip, but please gather your thoughts and bring all those ideas. We are here to educate each other in these very sensitive matters. And don't forget, the 16 days of activism is to answer all this, to help us, keep doing what we do best or what we know best. So allow me 1 minute to do that. Overreacts, close friend told you that. So as you watch this, I want you to think about, or rather to pay attention to the different types of financial abuse, because most of them will occur and we won't realize it's actually abuse in itself.
What if a close friend told you their partner controls their spending, hides passwords to shared accounts, or overreacts to the simplest purchases? The truth is, these could be signs of financial abuse. Financial abuse is when one person in a relationship uses money to gain power and control over the other person.
If I had marks on my arms and fear in my voice, you'd notice.
Allstate Foundation's Purple Purse campaign raises awareness about the often misunderstood issue. The group's PSA features tennis star Serena Williams.
But what about the abuse you can't see?
Not all abuse leaves a visible scar, but that doesn't mean it's not just as impactful or painful. Allstate calls financial abuse an invisible weapon and says it occurs in 99% of domestic violence situations. The effects can be so damaging, victims aren't able to leave their situations even if they wanted to. Abusers can go as far as to ruin their partner's credit or tax history so they can't move out or buy a car to have even a slice of independence. A 2017 poll by Sensei, an online financial wellness community, found 60% of millennials had experienced financial abuse. The survey taken by 2,000 millennials showed 69% of women reported experiencing financial abuse compared to 40% of men. An expert from the National Women's Law Center told CNBC no matter how trapped someone is in an abusive situation, there are always options. The center acknowledges that the most dangerous time for a victim can be when they decide to leave their abuser. There are organizations that offer legal help in those situations. And if there's time to plan an escape, domestic violence organizations offer a safe way out. But the founder of Sensei says the good news is there's an increased awareness of financial abuse, thanks in part to social media. 72% of people in the company's survey said they had some sort of awareness of what financial abuse is. Organizations like Purple Purse are dedicated to shedding light on the topic by educating not only victims, but also their family and friends. Because it's better to avoid a toxic situation at the first sign of trouble than to spend most of your life trying to recover from one.
Yes, any thoughts on that? Does that sound familiar? Anybody, please, any reaction to that?
I think just what I got from that video clip is, yes, financial abuse is real, and it can actually range in diverse ways, as small as let's just open a bank account jointly with that good intention and thinking that there's no malice about it, and once you've opened the bank account jointly, then maybe the abuse starts. So I think people, I was so grateful with the video, creating awareness of people being aware that financial abuse can start anywhere, with anyone and in any way.
Yeah, precisely. In most cases, in very subtle ways, so you won't even realize that it is happening. Yeah. So what struck me there was the statistic. There was the 69 and the 40%. That was according to a recent survey, and it may be American, but actually I believe it applies to here too. But what that statistic is saying is that we have 69% of women experiencing financial abuse and 40% men. So a difference of, is it 29 or 19? So whatever the figure is, yes, it goes to show that both men and women are affected by financial abuse. And yes, it may have different means, but the abuse is there. And I want to imagine in the West, perhaps it's more pronounced than in the developing countries, but in their own different ways, there will be that element of abuse on both genders. Just remember that we are talking about gender-based violence. Yeah, this cuts across age, across gender. And so let's really talk more about it, raise the awareness. But let's hear more views on that video clip, on what you think.
But I think it's not true as well, because so many people, they just suffer inside and they don't tell outside. They don't, that is just a stigma that if they tell outside to the friends or to the community, they will be given a bad name. That, some people, they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So that even the whatever this percentage, I don't think that's correct.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. Thank you, Kudip, for that. We know statistics are not always very factual, but what we know that they give an indication. And yes, it could be more than what we are being told or what we are seeing. Because of the stigma, not many people come out to talk about it. Which is why forums like this are quite important to encourage, that talking about it, normalizing those conversations to support another woman. So
Yeah,
thank you.
And another way of looking at it, Cecily, from what Dodi was saying, really, on both sides, really, there's an element of silence, even for a man to tell another man that have been emotionally abused by my wife. It's really difficult for that to happen. So that emotion is suppressed. So any statistic that we have at the moment is not really telling us the true picture at all. From an African perspective, it will be difficult for me to sit with my colleagues and say, I've been emotionally abused or financially abused by my wife. So we're talking about control. From that video clip, really it's about control. If you allow the other person to depend on you financially, you have the power imbalance is there. It's greater on your part than the other person, vice versa. If it's the wife that is earning a lot of money, again, that's going to be another difficult issue to look at. And we have a lot of examples of that kind of thing, even in our own society, in our own community, even from the Sierra Leonean community, which I belong to. So when the woman is earning a lot, again, there's the element of control, which is sometimes it's so difficult to understand why. And so we need to look at how do we manage our community, educate our community in allowing people to really verbalize some of these issues that they worry about, so that they are not worrying about how we perceive them when they tell us. If I went to you and say, I'm struggling with this in my house, perhaps, how do you relate to me? What will you do? You know, so we need to be educating ourselves on this platform in terms of what will you do? You know, so just looking at some of the difficulties that we can actually have. Sometimes when we hold on to the past a lot, it becomes difficult when we begin to say, well, it used to be like that. Oh, we are very happy. Everything was okay, but things are changing. How are we adapting? Are we problem solving? Or are we just kind of attached to the past glory and things are changing? You know, we have the COVID now. You know, before COVID, there were a lot of other issues. How are we managing to deal with it? And also when we also try to change the other person, somebody is really causing noise at the background. Can you mute, please? So when we look at trying to change the other person, it becomes very difficult for us. What you can actually do, change the way you react and respond. They can change, you know, rather than reacting to what they are doing, then you're just causing a lot of problems. And we all do have different beliefs and values. No two people have the same, but it's really about understanding, what does my wife really value in life? Are we sharing those values? Are we together? Are we connecting with our society in the same way? You know, and for some of us really coming from society where there's no welfare, there's no economic proficiency or equity and all of those things, it becomes very difficult. We become like the, what I was saying, where like the chancellor who is in number 11, all the time you're worried about spending because there's so many requests. And you read your budget almost every day because there's an uncle, auntie, this and that, they're all asking you. So your budget reading is almost on every daily basis. And how are you communicating with your wife, or how is your wife communicating with you on that basis? So let's be bold about some of these things. These are some of the areas where economically we begin to default, because I send money in secret to my family and my wife is not aware, and I'm depriving the family here from all of those things. So when you work together, it becomes a bit quite important for your wife to know that, look, I have a village, I have a family, I have extended family, and they need my support, but this is how much I'm going to support them. So that's another area we need to look at. And sometimes when you feel that you are held back, you know, by something, you need to understand what is holding me back. You know, the human being really need progress. We need development. We need to change our status every day. Otherwise, you feel that you are being held back by something. So if you're being held back by financial exploitation, either on both sides, it's important to look at all of this, because that impact on the family is also going to tell on you emotionally. And that's why we begin to develop mental health problems, because we begin to think that our stress bucket is not full enough, but it is, and we ignore it. Until you look at that stress bucket every time, it's not going to be easy for you. So these are some of the issues that we need to be looking at also as we go along today, talking to each other and trying to share our experiences. So it's really important for us to manage some of these things, problem solve, attack the elephant in the room. Have these conversations. It might be difficult, but have them. You know, even about death, about wills, about your status, your assets, and all of those things. Do you talk about these things? You know, when I die, what needs to happen? Or when you die, what needs to happen? When I'm sick, what needs to happen? Because all of these things require finances. So it's really important for us to open up to some of these very, very challenging and sensitive conversation, and using the appropriate language can be really vital on both sides.
James, thank you so much for that very useful input. And you're right. You're right in saying that we need more conversations on this, because there is so much that we don't talk about. And as you have rightly mentioned, the elephant in the room, we go around it instead of pointing at it and talking about what it is costing and the impact that is having on our well-being. So these conversations, we need to normalize them. You know, just like I would call a friend and start talking about what I have bought or what I am planning to have for dinner tonight. Let's make it as simple as that. Otherwise, it will continue being a real problem in our lives, and we'll continuously be presenting to our GPs, for headaches that are never ending, for backaches that we have no explanation of, and that will becomes a real problem in our lives. Any other comment there?
Yes, Cecily. I could actually talk about this because sort of have an experience with my daughter who went through 10 years of this type of abuse, financial abuse, and it only came out now how massive the abuse was. But she was never assaulted, there were no physical injuries. But when she now starts relating what was happening, opening accounts in her name, everything was in her name, and then he doesn't pay anything, or he goes to borrow money from somebody within the family, but says, oh, pass it on to so and so because she needs, to my wife, because she needs money too for the child and things like that. So, I mean, it's quite a big problem, and as James says about talking about the elephant in the room, you would go there, you see something is not right, but also because at times it's maybe the religion as well. It says, divorce is not allowed, or, your house, submit to your husband. So with all that going on from the pulpit at times, it can make people suffer and stay through a marriage or union when they are going through some abuse. So again, talking about it, I think it's very important so that people can come and express what is going on. But we could see when you go that something was not right, and to try to say, is everything okay? And then she would say, no, it's fine. Father is the head of the family and things like that. But you could see something was not right.
Wow, thank you, Grace. Again, very, very important pointers there. The reason why we remain silent, religion, our cultures, a man is the end of the family, and you can't go around, just, talking about him or talking about family secrets. And that continues for years. And however much people can notice, they will never come out and talk about what is happening to them unless or until it becomes a real life-threatening, which will be too late then. I wonder how we can deal with that, and especially where we keep saying divorce is a sin, when we relate that to religion, but the impact on our health is quite obvious that it's not good. I wonder how we can deal with that as a community. Yes, part of it is about talking about it, but how can we convince the victim and even the perpetrator on the impact it's having on the other person? Yeah, let's hear. What can we do? What should we be doing?
I think education plays a major role in all this. I mean, the perpetrator and the victim, they must be educated that what's happening is not right, and support to help them come out of it. Some people are in this because they're not aware that what's happening is not on, that sort of thing. And the man also may be doing it because he hasn't got the knowledge. So raising awareness and educating will help in some way. That's what I think.
Yeah, and you're very right there, Grace. The two will be very innocent in what is happening to them and what they are doing to the other person. And like we looked at last week, we said in most cases, it will take more than 5 times before we present to the services, especially BME communities. Yeah, it will go up to the 5th time and perhaps even more than that. And in terms of the years, it will take up to about 3 years before we can present to the services, which is a long, long time. I know there are issues within the services themselves, which they are continuously, improving on. But unless we talk about it and as leaders have a voice in the way those services are supposed to be run, then we are not going to be helped in any ways or in many ways. Any other comment?
Yes, if I can just make a quick comment, if that's okay. Again, I think somebody mentioned education, but educating who? In my opinion, we should be educating our teenage boys. We should be educating our young boys on how to treat women or even treat themselves and friends at a very early age. I think that is where the focus of the education should be. You've also mentioned working with social services, working with other organizations. Again, it's our local community, because every BAME community has a local group. How do they forge those alliances and making those information known to their members? Because a lot of the time is people struggle with finding the right kind of support, whether it's because we're traditionally suspicious of government agencies or for whatever reason. So again, how to ensure that our local organizations do not just focus on drinking and dancing, but on providing real support, real tangible support to their communities.
Wow, a very good point there, Delwyn. And this is why we are encouraged to have forums like this. And, fortunately, I know this forum is one of those that is privileged to have mainstream services come and share what they, the kind of service they provide, which then gives us an opportunity to have a voice on how they are delivering their services. Are they suitable for our needs? If they are not, how can we have an input in making them align to how they can best meet our needs? And all the services around are very open about reaching out to the communities, but how they do that largely depends on how we articulate the way we want the services delivered to them. Yes, it might take time, but we have that opportunity. If they cannot, at least we have an opportunity to form. I'm aware of the men's group in Reading. How much are we accessing that service, or how much are we shouting about it, so that the mainstream services can come and work with them? So yes, very, very important that services are aware of, they are providing according to our needs. And in most cases, you hear of cultural competence. Most services will say they are culturally competent in meeting the needs, but we are open to challenge that. That's why your voice counts.
And in addition to that, also the talking therapies, which I belong to as one of the CBT therapists, we have people in the role that are helping to bridge the gap between services and the community, grassroots community. So it's really important for you to know that I represent you when I'm talking therapies, the leaders and my colleagues, in terms of when you come into our service, what they expect from you, what you expect from them. But like Cecily is saying, we need to be courageous enough to come to services as much as we are courageous enough to go to a pastor, and also courageous enough to contact our elderly people, because as an African, there's always a tendency, which is good, it's our tradition, to consult our own elderly people with experience, like dad, uncle, and all of those things. It's perfectly okay. Nobody is working against that. But in addition to that, because they also have limitations, you have changed your circumstances. When you are in Africa, perhaps they were able to understand what is going on. But the moment you move out of Africa, they really don't know how to. If you tell them that it's snowing and the winter is cold, they will not understand. Because when I first came to this country and there was winter and I started having lots of jackets on, my mom thought I put on weight. So I cannot consult my mom to advise me on the winter or cold. She would say, I mean, my son is putting on weight. No wonder they said these countries have riches. You know, for her, that concept was there. So we need to change our concept around those issues as well. And when we're talking to our colleagues in the community, we need to be open up to them, because sometimes we only scratch on the surface. And for a therapist, you bring in your story, you are the hero of your story. I mean, no therapist is an expert in terms of your condition. So it's really about you opening up to say, look, this is my difficulties, and bring your agenda. Don't go with a blank check to any therapist or any professional, because they will use their own agenda. So it's really important for us to know that. And they'll mention about young people. In fact, I'm planning now I have started liaising with barbing shops along Oxford Road, where young people go for their haircut. So I meet them, we talk about being brave enough to talk about their mental health problems, or even talk about emotional issues. So that's really another way of looking at it. And ACRA is along Oxford Road. So it's a community well-being hub. So again, we need to be coming there, and there most of the time. Well, I do go there sometimes. And we have the Golders, you know, and we have people who are actually managing that, you know. So Constance is on this forum as well. So there are a lot of chances for us now. So let's really engage with them and try to understand that those differences can be narrowed, but we need to find solution together. Let's really minimize just sitting and worrying about things without problem solving, because if you can solve a problem, then there's no need to worry about it. But if you can't, then that's where you begin to worry. And why worry about a problem if you can't solve it? So it's really important for us to manage some of these things. So services are beginning to come to us. So we need to really meet them at our doorstep and begin to talk, because for quite a long time, they were saying how to reach people, or we don't find these people in the community because they were not coming to us. But now we are here. I represent you, I represent BHFT. So it's really an opportunity for us. I don't have all the answers, but I can signpost you to the answers that you need. So let's really don't be shy from our own issue, because we have a lot of experiences even in this forum. So don't even think that you don't have anything to offer to yourself. You can. Start by recognizing the issues. Start by identifying them. Start by talking about these things to your partners or friends, you know, and be bold enough to really attack the elephant in the room. Open up, talk about it, and educate your young people, your young ones, particularly the boys, you know, try to tell them what it's all about, and respect for each other and all of those things. So please, let's really open up. And I think this is the best part of this forum, where we sit and devise the way forward. How are we going to tackle this now that we know the problem, but how are we going to solve it? Thank you.
And James, thank you so much for that. Actually, we on Tuesday's forum, Zoom forum, we've been focusing on activism. And this Tuesday, we realized that we all have something to offer, and we've all been offering something. Yeah. And leader, when we are talking about services. We are the services. We all know somebody that can support or can provide somebody's needs somewhere. Yeah. So all the community champions here have a service that will support somebody else out there. So there is support. We just need to amplify more about it, so that access, or rather we become accessible in many ways. Now we are talking about the boy child. Yeah, so it's how we educate our boys. I think that is there when you brought up that point. How we can educate our young boys on domestic abuse, and equally the girls too. Remember, there is this 40% which was pointed at, but it's how we can really educate them and us on how to manage, or rather how to deal with domestic abuse, or how it shouldn't be there in the first place. And on that note, I was so impressed by one young boy who, through the TEND platform, strongly spoke about domestic abuse and the impacts it has on young people and the community at large. And because we have a bit of time, I'm going to share it now so that we can all go away, reflect on that, and think about how we can support somebody within our neighborhood, if not within our neighborhood, within our own family settings, or in the churches or religious centers we all belong to. As I do that, can somebody please put the contact details for men's group in ACRE on the chat? I see Karim there. You probably have those details. You can put them on the chat for Norma. I was asking for that. So let me share this young man's talk. Oh. So it's about 9 minutes, but very, very informative. So just bear with us as we do this.
A couple weeks ago, I had the ability to go to a candlelight vigil where a Utah Peace House representative read names off of a list. 19 names were read off of this list. People who are aged from 3 to 70. People of both sexes, people of all races, people who are gay and straight, people who are educated and people who are not, people who are rich, people who are poor. And though there may be high rates of domestic violence in certain demographics, domestic violence is an issue pressing on all of us. But firstly, what is domestic violence? It's not exactly a short definition. Though the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence defines it as, quote, the willful intimidation, physical and sexual abuse as a pattern of power and control, end quote. Domestic violence is not just physical and sexual. It is physical, sexual, emotional, and mental abuse. And yes, it is a pattern of power and control. It is the abuser imposing rule over the victim. It's incredibly important to know this definition when we start to actualize the people who are affected. Over 10 million men and women are affected by domestic violence each year. And although our initial instinct may be to put them in bar graphs and charts and such, we must actualize these people individually because they all have mental, physical, and emotional capabilities just like you and me. Every single one of them faces the impacts of domestic violence, which just in the physical realm has been linked to an increase in hypertension, cancer, and other cardiovascular diseases. So not only are victims being abused by their abuser, but they are also subjected to massive medical bills and massive stresses, which just add up, and they don't just stop with the body. The mental effects are astronomical. Domestic violence has been linked to an increase in PTSD, addictive behaviors, and suicidal behaviors. I've seen this not only on the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence website, but also in my own domestic sphere. Because I've seen my brother not only with hand marks around his neck, but abuse substances frequently. I've seen my sister not only with bruises on her body, talk about taking her own life. And I've seen my father not only with memories too harsh to share, talk about how his wife was worse than war. Because maybe the kid in the back of the class is weird for a reason. Maybe he doesn't do his homework because he's hanging out with his friends because he's scared of spending another 30 seconds around his parents. Maybe he insists on going to parent-teacher conference night alone because he doesn't want his parent to lash out. Maybe he doesn't socialize in class because he's scared that someone will close his mouth. Maybe he doesn't participate in talks about virginity with the other immaturity springs because he didn't get to choose where he lost his, but be sure as hell his parents did. Maybe he's mad at the world because his parents chose not to be around him. Maybe he carries himself like his friends more than his parents because his parents didn't do the parenting. Because when you're orphaned, your parents didn't choose to leave you, but when they beat you, be sure as hell they chose that. It doesn't just stop with parents. When you're shown that people your own age have the same capacity of hatred, you start to forget they have the same capacity for love as well. When your brother is mimicking your parents so alike that you can't tell a difference in the beatings, that's a perfect example of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. When all 4 of your kids want to kill themselves, there's your correlation, but the causation is just further up the familial road. How the hell do we fix this? People are affected in a numerous amount of ways. So what do we do? We've thrown money at the problem. We haven't seen much different. Coalitions in government actions, something should be happening, right? Not exactly. We've moved this into the realm of an issue. Stopped working in tandem with the government to try to minimize domestic violence. We've created a society where this is allowed. I agree with James Madison in Federalist 10 when he said, to remove the causes and control the effects. The same can be said about domestic violence, though I agree for both. Removing the causes. We must break down this familial cycle of abuse. We currently subside in this normalization of abuse. We subside in these harmful behaviors. We subside and laugh at jokes about victims. We make fun of them as if it's okay. So what we must do is stop normalizing this behavior. When you flip on your TV and you see Family Guy, an 18-year running show based off of cutaway jokes and harm, and you see Peter Griffin trying to kill his kids in a new way, that's normalization. When you switch over to Simpsons, a 28-year-old running show with only the abuse part, and you allow that to subside in abuse. When you flip on your radio and listen to the Love the Way You Lie, performed in 2010 by Rihanna and Eminem, hitting the top 10 charts in the US, that's the normalization that I'm talking about. And it's not just media. I understand that, and I'm sure you do as well. All of us. Don't speak up when we hear jokes being made. We listen to these songs, we watch these TV shows as if they're the best thing ever. And sure, we can have great TV shows that don't allow for abuse, and we can have great songs that don't normalize that behavior. We have to start doing that. We can't just say that's the next generation's problem. Next, we can begin to control the effects. We can work in tandem with the government. The Violence Against Women Act of 1984 diverted $1.6 billion towards the conviction of abusers. Though if an abuser is from state to state, they won't be prosecuted by courts, meaning they need to be brought before them. That's the job. You see the issue.
So please mute yourselves. We are just about to finish. Mute yourself so that we all hear here.
I know that system too well because that's what my mother did. She fled Utah and now she's walking around freely. Next, we can begin to listen to victims. I understand that might seem like a go happy lucky solution or something like that. But it's not just simply a measly thing. Listening to a victim can incredibly help the healing process, though we must take into account 3 major strategies when we do so. 1, actualize their age. That may sound weird, but just treat the person like the age they are. If you use an incredibly soft voice, trying to be as comforting as possible with just your voice, they may come across as like this 4-year-old. They may come across as someone who does not understand that people speak at a neutral tone. Then they start to forget that they are people as well, and that can incredibly slow the healing process. Secondly, if you're gonna hug them or hold their hand and try to comfort them that way, ask first. The victim was just subjected to abuse without their consent, so asking for their consent can do a lot in the healing process. And lastly, realize the healing process isn't instant. It's not like they go to therapy and they're better. Therapy is needed to combat the mental effects, but therapy is continuous. The healing process is a day-by-day assurance. It never really ends. Something else we can do to control the effects is start to report domestic violence more. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence theorizes that only 1% of cases of domestic violence are actually reported. This is incredibly important to go ahead and actualize. If we don't, then we realize that victims of domestic violence may be victimized multiple times, or multiple people may be being abused. So those cases aren't being reported, and those abusers aren't facing justice. My hypothesis on why people are hiding their stories is because we've cultivated a society where it's not okay to talk about that, where you're considered a soft wimp if you talk about your experiences, or you're defined by your experiences, not by your moral character. We've created a society where that is not okay. So as people, we must go ahead and move our society into a society of acceptance. We do not define people about what has happened to them, but about who they are. And lastly, before I leave you, I want to reference some of those stories I told you about. I'm a 74-year-old grandmother who has not seen her grandson in years because I'm scared of him. I'm a middle-aged father who stays in a motel because I'm scared of what my wife will do to me. I'm the girlfriend who got thrown into a ditch and shot by my boyfriend. I'm the son of an immigrant family who transitioned their childhood onto me. I am a victim of domestic violence, and I'm not going anywhere.
Wow. That's a powerful, powerful way of almost coming to an end of this conversation. How can we have more young boys, more young men coming up and being a champion and talking about domestic abuse, as we have heard from that young man? Yeah, he's a Leo activist for the good. Rachel, over to you.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, I'm going to take you back. I know that time has gone so bad. I was driving, but I was listening. I just want to say my experience because I am one of the victims that I've not been abused, but my family has been abused. And I hope this group has got private and confidential. Because my daughter was abused when she had her first boyfriend. She went through so much, and she thought that is how they live. That is how the boyfriend or the man, because it was her first man, so she thought that's how it goes with men. She was abused financially, physically, everything. She was abused, and because I'm saying I'm a victim because it ruined my family. Everything ruined my family. He was from Sierra Leone. And when he was asked by the social services why was he doing that, he said it's part of their culture in Sierra Leone. That's how they treat women. And that is how it was written, even the paperwork that the Sierra Leoneans, that's how they do. I don't know how the truth it is. So that thing ruined my family because even today, my daughter is not the same again. She's suffering from mental problem because of what she suffered from. She didn't have her own bank card. The man was keeping the card, but the money which was coming was not his own money. So she was financially abused. She could not use even 10 pounds by herself. As I think I can say my daughter was she is a weak person, a weak child. She's one of my weak child. But that does not mean that she is supposed to be used. So she fell on somebody who abused her so much. Even today, she's still not the same again. So abuse can ruin the family because everybody in my family was abused because of that. I look after her son because she was not able to look after her son anymore because of the way she went through. So it can ruin anybody, it can ruin the family. And before you notice that there's something going on, it is too late because that time I knew that she was being abused because she was not living local where I was living. She was, I knew when she was already pregnant. All this being taken by the social services because there's a lot of fighting in the house, financial and physical abuse. So it ruined the whole, everybody was ruined. So I went and I stepped in and I took my grandson away from them because he went to the social services. So I'm still looking after him. I started looking after him when he was 8 months. Now he is 9 years. So it didn't bring anything good rather than just a lot of things went wrong. Even today's just bad. But who can say it happened? It happened. So that's my saying today, because the time has gone too far. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you so much, and for being vulnerable enough to share your personal experience, and it needed to evidence that what we are talking about here is not what we read from the books, it's what happens on an everyday basis. And I mean, we can't take that lightly. You know, it has taken you a lot of confidence to trust at the forum and to share that. And I really hope you're getting the right support, or you've been getting the right support, and you're right, ruining the whole family. That is, you know, that's what happens. And if we can prevent that, we will have saved thousands and thousands of families. And by sharing your story, Rachel, helps another family to know, actually, these are things that happen on a day-to-day basis. And you know, Rachel, you can call us anytime. James is around, he's still here. I'm here, and a few others in the forum.
From Sierra Leone. So you tell me the same story I've heard from people from Sierra Leone. James.
Yeah, and as you have heard, they are not all the same. It's lack of
not all of them.
Yeah,
it's interesting, you know, and I wonder how you feel when I talk to you, or when I come to this forum, and even Victor Kuruma is also from Sierra Leone, and there are so many other people on this forum. They are from Sierra Leone, and I can only imagine how difficult this was for you and the entire family. But I can assure you that this is not a practice in my country. Indeed, in any society does not allow domestic violence. Otherwise, we can't be sitting here talking about it, and there should not be any law to prevent it. They would have been allowed because society says so. So this is an individual story, but at the same time, it represents all of us and your family. And I know the story you've told me, you've spoken about some of these things, and I'm glad that you are able to talk about these things. And I think this is what we really need in terms of going forward, because my question was, now that we know this thing can happen, it's common with us, I really want us to look at how do we break this silence. But I really want people to tell me next time when we meet, what difficult conversation have you been avoiding? And how are you going to engage with it now that you know that that's one of the ways forward? So we must have been avoiding tiptoeing around or walking around this elephant in the house or in the room. How are we now going to approach it? So tell me next time when we meet, how did you manage to engage, even to start talking about a difficult conversation, sensitive conversation around these issues? Because it's really important. And for all of us, it's important to continue to really demonstrate the role model for our young ones. And Cecily said, young people, you are empowered. This is a forum where you come and share your own experiences. We can assure you of confidentiality. It's not 100% because this is an open forum anyway. But if you need any support further with any of those issues, or anybody who have had what Rachel has said and other people have said, and the video clips, and you have any issues, please contact your local services and your GPs, also another port of call, and secondary mental health services. You know, we have CP, we have the crisis team, we have talking therapy. So please don't keep this under the carpet. It's really not good enough to do that. It's good enough to talk about it, because that will be a way forward. So I want to thank you all, and I hope Cecily is going to make the final thing, but please engage with one difficult conversation you've been trying to avoid because of fear of either stigma or cultural issues. Try and see whether you can break through, because culture can change. We are the culture. We are the people that part of this culture, because without us, there's no tradition. So let's see how we can modify some of these things. But thank you so much. It's been really lovely. And And thank you so much, Rachel, for being so brave and also accepting me, even though I came from Sierra Leone. But I can assure you that's not a common practice in my country at all.
Thank you, James. And today is, sorry, Rachel, go on.
I just say thank you, James. He is my son, so there's no way I can escape him. So he's fine.
Yeah, and really it's good to hear that, you know, this is not how we do things. Yeah, those are individual cases. So culture, nobody should do things as an excuse for culture. And it's about being the change that we seek. And that's how James has ended it here. Be the change that you seek. How can we change that culture to a culture that is welcoming, that is human, and that is compassionate enough not to ruin somebody else's life? Yeah.
Yeah, because now, like for example, he has ruined my grandsons. He don't have a daddy that he can call a daddy. So that he didn't deserve that. He don't have a mother that he can go to, like say, this is my mother. He's just makes up as well because he don't know whether my mother, I am the mother, or the mother who happened to her mother, to his mother who is not with him. That ruins the whole team. Everybody is ruined.
Yeah.
But it is well. What can we say? It is well.
Yeah. We are with you, Rachel. And I know we can chat. Yeah, just get in touch. We are here. And all I can say, thank you so much, people, for opening up, being in this conversation. I have posted the video clip there as you have requested. Let's talk more about it. Next week, we are continuing with the same conversation, and we have the Domestic Abuse Network team joining us, Bakshawaint, just to hear more or to educate ourselves more. Otherwise, thank you so much.